So, hello, this is Michael Whitehead again. This video is going to be, I kind of want to go ahead and make some videos here and kind of get some stuff started, and I may end up doing things a lot better in the future. Right now I'm using a tablet that's on my steering wheel in my car, so it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm at work, and there's nothing really happening, so I figured I'd go ahead and jump on here and make a video. Um, Probably going to end up getting some better camera equipment, and I'd like to make this more of a complete, I guess, picture of events. But for now, I guess I'll just stick to the tablet that's in front of me on the steering wheel. So I wanted to get on here and talk about kind of what happened, not the underlying issue, but just the process that I went through. There's a lot of people that have relatives that are in prison, in jails. And one thing that prisons and jails are really good at, and the courts tend to back them up on this, is keeping information from family and from even the inmate that's even there. So if an inmate's moved, I know in Kentucky and in most states, family doesn't hear about it immediately. The inmate isn't told about it, certainly, and it's a security issue. And they cite that as a reason for a lot of things. I can understand that just objectively, how that is a security issue. If you know where you're going, the day you're moving. If you say you wanted to bust out, you'd have somebody on the road. You get it. So when you're transferred different places, they don't tell you where you're going. When you are getting certain types of visits, they don't tell you. You just get called up to visitation. So prisons and jails are really good at keeping information from people, and to some degree that's allowed and understandable, and the other degree it's not, and it's but that's a part of it. So the family of the person who's in custody deals with that, and the person who's certainly locked up deals with that too. So when I was initially arrested, it was September 30th of 2009, and I was arrested after I was indicted for the charges that I was arrested on. Those charges initially were murder. In Kentucky, it's a Class A felony. It carries 20 to 50 years to life, possibly the death penalty. So the other charges, that was the most severe charge. The other charges, that's fireworks off to my left here. The other charges were theft by unlawful taking, and then theft of a legend drug, and also was charged with practicing medicine without a license, and wanton endangerment, and tampering physical evidence. Where I live at, where I'm from, Louisville, Kentucky, everyone that's charged with anyone's death, it seems like, it's not always the case, I'm not going to make a generalization, but everyone's pretty much charged with tampering physical evidence, because somewhere along the way, the state or the government has a theory that you did something to cover up the crime that they charged you with. So whether that's taking a pistol that was used in a shooting and throwing it in the river, or washing your hands after you stab someone, those are all things that are considered and to some degree understandable. But it seems like they just kind of blanket charge everyone with that initially, and then later on it may stand or it may get dismissed. In my case, the wanton endangerment and the tampering physical evidence were dismissed on the motion of the prosecutor. He did that because there wasn't any evidence that I did any of those things. The wanton endangerment, and I'm not an attorney, I'm not a police officer, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not speaking as a lawyer. I'm just speaking from my own experience, and that's going to be kind of the general thing of when I talk, period. I'm not speaking as an attorney, it's not legal advice. So those two charges fell off, and then through a plea bargain, the murder was amended down to reckless homicide, which in Kentucky is a Class D felony. Kentucky has A, B, C, and D. A is the most severe. D is the least severe in terms of culpability, and also in terms of possible prison time for that charge. So reckless homicide is a Class D felony, and the statute's pretty clear and concise. And it says when you cause the death of someone and you fail to perceive an unjustifiable risk the death would occur. Um, so after a lot of debate and process and talking with my attorney, I took a plea bargain. It was the second plea bargain. The initial one was a higher degree for the death, and I had a lot of concerns with that. Not so much for the time, but because of what that would mean for the future of my relationship with my daughter. And that was a primary concern with, if I plead guilty to this, how is this going to affect, my life when I get out of here, and the ability to pursue visitation, legally with my daughter. And so I rejected the initial plea bargain for that reason alone. And the second plea bargain was what I ended up pleading guilty to. As far as the arrest, I mean, the indictment came down from the grand jury on September 30th, same day that I was arrested in 2009. The events that I was arrested for actually happened in March of that year of 2009, March 26th. I'm not going to talk about those specific events in this video. It's going to be something that's going to come out later on. I'd like to have a better setup and be able to kind of explain things in a little clearer terms than being tired and at work with a dome light is the only light that I have. So the events happened. There was an investigative process, and then I cooperated to a large extent with the authorities, with the police and the coroner that were involved in the case, and went and was interviewed by the detective without an attorney. Also gave information, gave evidence, signed consents the day that everything happened. I wasn't trying to interfere or intervene with anything that they were doing, and certainly didn't want to get charged with anything else. That wasn't my thinking at the time, but I didn't want to do anything to frustrate the process that they had to go through. So there was a 6-month period between the time the crime that I went to prison for happened and then me actually getting arrested, right about 6 months. I can say during that 6 months, I did everything that I should not have done. My grandma, who I love and respect and value her opinion very much, she advised me not to jump into any kind of relationship with any women, and I did that. And I'm deeply regretful and sad that I did that. It was a mistake. I should not have done it, and it caused some bad effects. But I was lonely, and I fed into my own human loneliness and feelings, and got involved with a couple of women that I shouldn't have got involved in with. So during that time, I had my daughter. I had custody of her because there wasn't, me and my wife were married. So she died, and the police were doing their investigative process, and I had custody of her. Wasn't a reason that I wouldn't have. I would try to be very cooperative and cordial with her family to let them see her as often as they want. I did have some kind of limitations that I wanted. They wanted to take her out of state. I refused to allow that because I had a thought in the back of my mind that they would take her out of state and wouldn't come back with her, maybe, because if they got her out of state, then I'd have to go and deal with that process, whatever that would entail. I didn't want to be put in that position. So I was drinking a lot after my wife died. I'm pretty sure I mentally snapped is the way that I would phrase it, and I wasn't seeing colors and or seeing smells and hearing colors and nothing like that. But I saw her places after she died that I knew that it shouldn't have been her. It couldn't have been her, but I believe that it was. I'm not a big believer in ghosts and fairy tales and stuff like that, but I saw her places that she was at. Um, I chased after her. I remember doing that. I remember going to a exposition nearby and seeing her run down the stairs, and I went after her. The friend that I was with, he's like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" So there's Ashley. I gotta go meet her. And so, pain and loss does a lot of things to you, and it can make you see things that I see that now, being 11 years out from the events that happened, and 11 years away from the last time I saw her. So, I drank a lot, and I drank to excess. I never let my daughter see me drunk. She never was around when I was intoxicated. I never did anything other than drink. But that's how I dealt with the pain that I had of the loss that I felt, and how I felt about the situation. Is I drank. It wasn't healthy. It was mostly self-destructive. But there was one time the weekend before I was arrested that I did drink and drive a pretty fair distance. And when you drink and drive, even if you're down the street from your own house, it's still not good to do. It's illegal. It's unsafe. But I drank and drove a pretty good distance, and it was a rainy night. It was dark, I remember. And I remember stopping a couple places and just being a total and complete jackass. So not one of my brighter moments. But I did manage to make it home. and didn't hurt anybody, didn't hurt myself, didn't hurt my car. And then later on that week, that was Friday and Saturday, and then that following Wednesday is when I was arrested. So at the time that I was arrested, I was honestly glad that I was arrested. I felt like I was on this spiral and I wasn't going to be able to stop. I was managing to keep up, I guess, and try to emotionally and mentally provide for my daughter. But I know I wasn't doing a great job because I wasn't in great shape myself. I wanted to turn myself in numerous times, and I remember driving by the police station, the police headquarters here in Louisville, with handcuffs on me, and wanting to walk in handcuffed, and to make it easier, to just because I really, guilt is something that is strange. People feel it and they can override it, and the amount of guilt that I felt every day that I was alive and that she wasn't was more than I can explain. I didn't eat or sleep really for about 2 weeks after she died. I couldn't. I passed out at her funeral. I remember that. I remember kind of coming to and seeing people around me. I hadn't eaten anything the whole week really. I drank, Coke and smoked. So some habits are hard to break. So when I was arrested, I was glad that I was arrested. I felt like in one hand that I could, maybe confess my sins to someone, whether it was a priest or a detective or a prosecutor or a lawyer or somebody. Maybe that would make me feel better. I knew what I had done was wrong, and I wanted to be, I guess, held accountable for it. But and now was the time. So the day that I was arrested, my grandma called me because I was at a gun shop, actually putting some money on a gun that I was going to buy. And I just gotten back outside from the shop, and I had my daughter in the car with me. And she called and said, "The police are here. They're here to arrest you. You need to come. You need to come home. You need to come back here." So I hung up the phone. I said, "Okay." And I pulled the gun that I had at the time, It was a Glock 40 caliber pistol. And I started to pull it out of the holster on the side of my hip, and I put it in my mouth, started squeezing the trigger. And I remember looking back in the rearview mirror and seeing my daughter and the look she had on her face. And I thought, I can't do this to her. I can't do this to her. I can't. To my family, to her, this can't be how it's going to end. I've got to go and I've got to deal with this, and I've got to face whatever they're going to do, and no matter what it means or looks like or feels like. And I looked at her, the look on her face, I can't describe it. It was just kind of a quizzical look, like, what are you doing? A totally innocent, quizzical, what are you doing kind of a look. And so I put the gun back in the holster, and I called a friend of mine. I said, I need you to meet me somewhere between where I'm at and where I'm going to be. And he knew where I was going to be because he lived not far from where I lived at the time. So he said okay, and he was there. I think he actually beat me there. I remember making some phone calls on the way. I called my wife's family and told them what was going to happen, and I think they probably already knew. I think they were pretty sure they were definitely in on the loop of when I got arrested, and that's part of it. I'm not mad at them for that. It's how it went. It's their right, I guess, to have. But it was this constant kind of a Cold War kind of a thing for that 6 months. Spy versus spy kind of a thing. I don't know. Very weird situation. But the friend of mine that I met, I gave him my gun, I gave him my knife. I had a little pocket knife on me. I gave him my wallet, my ATM card, debit card, that kind of stuff. Gave him some other items. I had a radio and some other things, a lighter, I think. I didn't want them being taken or seized or anything, and they weren't relevant to what was going on. So met him, gave him those things, and then I went ahead and went toward the house. And I noticed a police cruiser that was waiting, I guess, along the route, and kind of got in behind me. Didn't turn his lights on at first, and then continued to follow me through a neighborhood on my way to the house that I was staying with my grandma at the time. And got to a certain point, went past the school, and he turned his lights on, and I went and parked in the driveway. Lowered the window. He got out of his car and pointed his gun at me, and I put my hands out the window, both of them, and parked the car, put it in park, and put my hands out the window and said, I'm not armed. I've got my daughter in the car with me. The police knew that I had a gun. They knew that I had a few guns. I didn't want them thinking that I was going to resist. I didn't want them shooting at me. Certainly not with my daughter in the car. So put both hands out the window and told them that I was not armed and my daughter was in the car with me and not to shoot. And they said, we'll figure all that out in a minute. They did what's called a felony stop. Pulled me out at gunpoint. I went back to their voice. They handcuffed me. And that was it. So the officer allowed me to give my daughter a hug with my hands behind my back. It didn't really work out very well, but kind of like a shoulder, kind of a hug sort of thing. And that was it. I was put in the back of a car, went down to the Clark County Jail. From there, I was there that night, and, I smoke. I still smoke now. And I was beginning to feel the effects of nicotine withdrawal, and I hadn't felt that in a very long time. So that was going on. I had the stress of what was going to happen in the future, and then the uncertainty and am I going to see my daughter again? Am I ever going to get out? A lot of things went through my mind. So the next day, I was transferred to the Jefferson County Jail in Louisville, which is where the indictment came from, across the river in Kentucky. It's where the crime happened, where the events happened. It was all over there. The detective during the course of me moving to Indiana, I told him that I was moving. I couldn't stay in the apartment that me and my wife lived in. I couldn't mentally do it. I couldn't live there. Too many good memories, and then the bad memory of her dying. So I couldn't stay there anymore. So I moved, let him know where I was moving to, gave him my phone number, stayed in contact with him, and all that. Later on, went through the process of being arraigned, having bond hearings, and so on and so forth. I'll talk about that later on in another video, I guess. But that was pretty much the course of my arrest. So went from a direct indictment to being arrested when they served the indictment when I was arrested. So there was a couple agencies there, the Jeffersonville Police, the Indiana State Police, and the Clark County Sheriff's Office. I went into custody peacefully because I had my daughter in the car and because I didn't want to hurt anybody. That's not who I am. But so there's that. I guess I made another video, and if you have any questions or comments, put them down below. And thanks.